I'm Michelle.
And I'm Katherine.
And we're here at the Healthy Hurried Human podcast,
where we talk about keeping pace in a world that never slows down.
Katherine, when you first came to on with Foxygen, there was something that you started talking about that really got my ear, because that was not something that was on my radar. And I want us to really dive into this because, funny enough, since you've brought it up, we hear a lot about it. And it's the knowledge gap that is looming in the workforce.
We were really seeing this. The company, my former company that I was with, was in the construction world and in a lot of factories and things where there were generations of people retiring, and it was the situation that there was this tactic knowledge. This is my new favorite word, is tactic knowledge. And it went with them when they went out the door. And tactic knowledge is that practical knowledge that you learn on the job, that you know how the equipment works, and it is not something that's found in the training manual. It's experience, and there's no other way. It's experience and know-how that comes from doing the job.
Yeah.
And we see people leaving companies, and there is not informational systems logged on how to do certain parts of the job.
Yeah.
And they're leaving for a number of reasons: retirement, or we don't have as many people to replace them. People are, you're never going to get all of that information downloaded. You're just not.
So it's actually creating quite a crisis. One of the things that I was talking about before you brought this up, and before, I'd heard about it, and I was kind of focused on one side of it, was that we have, for the first time in precedent, 4 generations in the workforce. And so I was kind of really focused on that it's like, hey, we've got 4 generations, and that creates communication challenges and all the challenges that come with 4 generations. I mean, imagine a house with 4 generations. It creates quite a stir. So if that's in the workforce, and that was where my focus is, and you were the one that said, you think that's hard?
Loss of industry knowledge.
Wait till, and so we started kind of digging into this a little bit to say, okay, what does this really look like? And we found that it's actually a looming crisis, because we were sitting in the office doing the math the other day of, it's really 5 to 7 years where the youngest of the baby boomers really will be leaving.
Or have the option.
But also at that year 7 is where the next generation, our generation, Gen X, can start to, the oldest of our generation. We're in the young. We're just side note. We're in the youngest part, but the oldest part of Gen X will begin their exiting. So I mean, that's 2 generations of tactical knowledge exiting.
And there are a lot of studies out there about how do you capture industry knowledge. And this leads into mentorship.
Yeah.
This leads into
which we're going to talk about
job security.
Yeah.
This leads into do leaders really know what their employees do? It translates out to so many things. And if you have a high turnover job, or if you have a client base that it's really important that they know the client base. I think of this hilarious Office episode where Karen has just come to the Scranton office and Phyllis is taking her out to call on clients. And they go to the beauty parlor and get their hair done, and they show up because everybody in that office has their hairstyle the same way. I mean, that is right there. That's tactic knowledge. If I know my client base I'm calling on, you learn on the job, and some of that is really important to learn on the job. And then we get into the other thing. I know I'm sidetracking us. You're going to shoot me, but what does need to change?
Well, so
sometimes things do need to change.
I wanted to just speak to that. You said that if there's high turnover, what we're seeing, or what I think studies and surveys are seeing, is that companies are replacing people, but they're not replacing the wisdom that those people had. And that can be that there's only so much time before that catches up to you as an organization. So
It can mean that you had a client that doesn't want to work with you anymore. They may have what happens, and this happens in every industry, is the client is attached to the individual person that worked for your company. And for some reason that person is no longer at your company. Are they going to follow them, or is it an opportunity that your client takes to say, let's put it out for bid?
I mean, we're like that as consumers. You know, if we have a favorite place that we go and our person's gone, we're not as motivated to maybe drive a little bit out of our way or to go to that one. I'll find something new. I know I have been, when you brought that up, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm that consumer.
That's right.
You know, a hair place or the mechanic at the place I like that does my oil. That happened recently. The guy that always does the oil in my car wasn't there, and I was like, when's he come back, or when is he here? So that's a real thing.
I will say one industry is services that come into your home. I had a guy for 15 years was with the HVAC company, and he was in my house twice a year. He knew my system inside and out. If he said I needed something, I did it.
Yeah.
And he was no longer with the company when I called to schedule it specifically with him. Every time then I get a new guy, and they may be young, they may be trying to upsell me for something. There is a measure of trust. There's a measure of, like, I trusted his knowledge. I had a working relationship with him. I knew his wife collected Legos. Like, I am naturally driven to want to form relationships with these people. And recently it's made me say, I'm putting it out to bid. Who's going to do my HVAC? Because I don't like the new people who are constantly upselling me, and I don't trust they're going to be for my good.
That they're really there for your benefit.
That's right.
Yeah, for sure. And so I want to ask you, you kind of hinted on it a little bit a second ago about what is causing this, but really what, when companies are, you know, just replacing people, I had a question and it just left me.
Well, one of the questions is, why is this happening?
Yeah.
Why is it happening in a not just a high turnover, but there are sometimes it's more expensive. Like, it's easier to hire someone in, or companies will have a high turnover because the turn and burn. Like, we can bring somebody in, they're less expensive for us to pay. We only need them to know this.
Okay, so there's my question. Thank you. You helped me remember it. So the question is, is it possible for a company, you know the answer to this, just so you know.
Oh, good.
Is it possible for a company to feel like, you know, we're saying we're looking at the level of relationship, like, I trust this person, this is who I like. Is it possible? Because it would be easy for a leader to say, well, I can't train that. But can they replace that person who customers, maybe their big client likes working with that particular employee? Are they able to bridge that gap and still bring that client along so that they don't feel the pain of losing the person they had the relation? Are they able to do it? Can companies do it? Is there a way to do it?
There is always a way to do it.
Yeah.
There's a way to do it well. It's going to be specific to your company and your industry.
That's right.
But truthfully, as we know across the board, you only can be accountable for yourself. The company can do everything they want to do, and they cannot make the client. They can do everything right, and the client can still walk.
That's right. But as you're talking, I'm thinking about very specifically, because you were using HVAC, and for a while we had when they come to spray for bugs in your yard, the mosquitoes here in Georgia, they're really bad.
Control.
Pest control. Thank you. So we had pest control, and I had the same guy. He'd come in my house.
Right.
I knew where he had moved from Florida. I knew about his kit. Like, we'd built this relationship. I mean, you kind of want that level of trust because he's literally walking around to your whole house when it's not clean and laundry's, you want that level of trust. But there was this one time they scheduled somebody else, and I was watching, and I was like, he's not doing what I know I've seen my guy do. And he was young, and I was like, well, he's probably a new worker. So I called and I was like, hey, I want my guy back. And they were like, well, he's been on vacation or whatever. And I'm like, that's great, but I need you to bring my guy back because I was watching and your guy missed all the places I know I've seen, I don't want to say his name, my guy go. So they did. He came back out, a week later, and he said to me, he's like, look, he goes, he's new. He's young. He's learning. Tell me where, what you saw. And so I told him what I saw, and he's like, you know what? Do you mind if I take that back to him? And do you mind if next time we come out, I show him, because I'd like to, and I was like, he's like, I'm not letting go of you. Like, I will be your person still, but sometimes he's my cover. So do you mind? And I thought, that's the way to do it. That's the way, is you have to, you bridge the relationship.
That's
right.
So
I think if companies understood that it's like, you really can bridge that relationship by kind of forming the link, the arms. So let's get back to what are some of the reasons why, what's called, we alluded to it, that some of it's retirement, and sometimes it's money, but what are some of the other causes for
one of them is that you don't have a system to capture the information. Like, you're not that tactic knowledge. You don't have somebody downloading or writing. They're not the ones who are writing the training manual.
Right.
They're not the ones that are mentoring, or they're not the ones that are onboarding new people. I worked with a union electrical contractor, and I will say that there were, in every one of our unions, there would be the old guard, the person who could tell you from the other side of the warehouse what that sound was, because they had that life experience. And there were always people there who were very well invested in the unions were different, and some of them did mentorship beautifully. But a company had to be willing to pay for the apprentice to come out, as well as the person there that was much more experienced, was at a higher level. And some did it really well and some didn't. And it's also on the receiver. Sometimes you hire someone coming in who wants to prove themselves. They don't necessarily, it's not necessarily a culture that is mentorship, but people come in and they feel like their own ego, or they need to prove themselves. They're not in the mindset of learning.
Yeah.
And so you have not a way to capture the knowledge, which is, how do you capture the industry knowledge? There are about 14 current articles out there about it, because it is such a significant thing.
On just how to capture it, yeah.
Because also moving to AI systems or software systems, I've seen this happen in multiple companies.
It's so much.
They're transitioning the functionality of a software system, and it doesn't capture all of the nuances that you had built in the old one for the particular clients.
Well, and so, I think leadership has to have a higher level of emotional intelligence and relational tools to navigate bridging that gap. And so we obviously can't speak to all industries and all everywhere, but we do know that oftentimes that is a big challenge if you don't, because companies tend to move people up because of ability and not necessarily their emotional intelligence, or, people like to call it soft skills. I like to call it strategic skills, because when you know how to work with people, you know how to be more strategic.
That's a great term. There is so much social game, for lack of better words, that takes place in promotions and workplace camaraderie, that strategic skills on how to be great at that. That's a great term.
Yeah.
It's a great term.
So
I will also say that there there are people in an industry who may be gifted in sales or client relationship or client development. They know how to do that. What they're not great at is the new IT system.
Right.
And they get stuck and they begin to lose heart in their job because so much pressure is put on them for data input, fabulous PowerPoints, different things like that. And when leaders are adopting new software or new training or new processes, there is always going to be pushback. And it's not because people don't like change. It's because people maybe have risen to success in a role because they're really good at that. Mm-hmm. And when you add in a different process, that may be a skill they don't have. And there needs to be some understanding and grace and some way to compensate for that. Because in our world with AI and everything changing, we're going to have to adapt technologically.
Yes, right.
To be competitive. And to capture information. Not sometimes all they think about capturing is the financial aspect of a project. And I think we've got a lot of programs out there that can download that type of data, and we're not capturing the actual the tactic knowledge. But there has to be a space for other generations or people who process information differently to work well within your system, because they have something they can bring to the table.
So that's you're already kind of starting in the next thing that we're going to talk about, which is the practical solutions. And
right, yeah.
One of them is the intentional mentorship program. This is, it's structure. It's teaching or helping. This is where the practical solutions are where, Foxygen, you and I can help, and our team is. These are structured, simple, and mutual, because how often have we heard stories like this where it's like, hey, Joe over there who's going to retire in 3 years is going to mentor you, Mindy, who just started. And there's this, like, he's like, I just want to do my job. And Mindy's like, he's not somebody I want to spend time. There's nobody thought, hey, is this a mutual one? He's not really somebody who wants to do that. And she doesn't want to just be stuck with somebody. She wants to go with somebody who she has a natural chemistry with, or a connection with, or interested in maybe what Joe even does. So, I mean, that might not be but you're looking at me funny. Like, that's not the best.
I'm processing through a storyline, trying to decide if it fits in here. And my dad was one of those people that trained people to be managers or leaders. And one of the key factors of a leader that he instilled in me was my father would say, actually both my parents, I did a lot of theater growing up, and my mom would say, learn everyone's line, because if the principal or the main character can't show up, you already know the script. And my dad would say, learn every job. Like, you may start off at the bottom, but the manager should be able to know everyone else's job. And I had worked my way through the ranks at a retail company. I could do any job of everybody that was there. Some people did it faster and better, but I could still, in the end, do every job. So I understood that. Then I went to a new company, and I thought I was being very helpful. And I have the ability to learn a lot of different things, maybe not master them, but I can do them and I can help out. And I inadvertently was offending people by saying, I can learn how to do your job.
Oh my gosh.
And they were like, I was like, you can teach me, I can learn, because I'm very confident in my ability to learn.
That's not what they heard.
Nope. But I thought I was being so helpful. And I was like, give it time. I'm pretty confident I could, I'm pretty confident that I could learn things, and that I can probably learn how to do a lot of things. And it was not.
That's not how it was received.
No. So when you say mutual on both parts, you may have someone who feels like, great, I get to hire my replacement. And there are companies that do this. They hire people in and they have you train them, and then they let you go because you're not a good culture fit. You're cantankerous, you're too expensive, and this is their guy. There are a lot of different reasons that I'm staring down the camera. Sorry, because this is so. But companies do that.
Yeah.
You have to, and there are people who feel threatened that I'm not falling into that because I'm not hiring my replacement. And that is a problem, and it happens in companies. And unfortunately, that is numero uno for the leadership, is to make sure that there is a succession plan
Right.
for the older people so they don't feel like they're losing
They're
their
being
job.
threatened by it. So all of this is really to support our number one solution. If we're going to say number one, we've got a few, but the number one is that there has to be an intentional mentorship program. It's got to be part of wouldn't you say, because you and I talk about this with the mission and value statements that they have, it needs to be a part of that you believe it so much that it's part of your value system.
Well, and it's part of your onboarding.
Yep.
Offboarding people, it starts day one. And how are we going to handle, there was a competitor of ours that the more people I interviewed from the company, they were moving out of. We had a footprint in Birmingham. We were moving out of Birmingham. They were moving out of Birmingham. So they had a lot of people available in the town for us to hire. And the more I found out about their mentorship, after a certain level, they would move people into training. And they had figured out a way to make it attractive to people who had reached a certain level that really were not performing great in their job. They were slowing down. They wanted to play golf more. They were kind of phoning it in, but they had tactic knowledge and industry knowledge and training and experience, and they moved them over, and they figured out a way to make it mutually beneficial.
That's right.
And they could capture that company's knowledge and drill it down to train the next generation.
I love it.
There was one company we were working with where they had a guy that was, all he was cared about was protecting. He didn't want to take any risks because he was at that age where he was not willing to risk. The younger people wanted to risk and try to get jobs and bring stuff in. And he began to slow that branch down. And when we said, what if we move him over? Our advice was to move him over to training because he had so much knowledge. And he said, I'm not going to get my bonus. I won't do it.
So that's our next thing, which is we have to reward it. We have to reward it. You and I are big believers that recognition and incentives has to go along with these mentorship programs and making it part of it's part of it's our value system here in this company. The other one is, and you kind of talked about this, the knowledge capture tools where we blend tech and relationship, human knowledge with tech knowledge and tech skills. But the culture of multi-generational respect. Talk a little bit about that one. Where it's the storytelling and the curiosity and creating that.
Right. What we're learning is younger generations, when we're coming in, we're talking millennials, Gen Z, there is a aspect of convincing you have to do. Millennials, we know they want to make the world a better place.
Right.
They want to know that their contributions matter. They want to see a line of sight to the greater good. They are a little hesitant to trust, like the younger generations, like especially Gen Z, really the lower Gen Z thinks we've botched everything. And so they are hesitant to want a mentor in certain...
But they do like collaboration.
And so how do you make it appealing of they also want to learn on their own, but they unfortunately, a lot of Gen Z hasn't been taught how to study. They haven't been taught how to research. They haven't been taught how to mine information for themselves.
That's right.
And they're been told their whole life that the baby boomers ruined the world for them. Like they've been just indoctrinated into thinking that the world is a screwed up place. It's dark. It like most of their literature, their music, like it's, a big, scary, dark world out there, or we can't trust media. They have sources of...
They know how to take in information, but they do not know how to dig for information.
Well, they also, and you and I talked about about it, is they're very much, I don't know if I can trust you that knowledge is accurate. I'm going to have to figure that out for myself.
So I don't want us to give too much away because we're going to be talking about Gen Z, I think, in our next episode. But so with one of our practical solutions is trying to build a culture where we appreciate and have that mutual respect for multi-generations. And I really like the word collaboration. I love that word. I love mentorship and apprenticing and all of that. But the new-ish word in the last, I don't know, at least since 2020 is collab. Let's collab. And I think when we can create that in a work environment, it's already, if you come into a job and you see it happening, where it's like, oh, they do that here.
There are going to be people in your organization that are natural mentors and coaches.
Yeah.
And there is a difference in a coach and in a mentor than it is in a authoritarian
manager, micromanaging.
Well, if you have an authoritarian approach, if you have a big ego of it's my way or the highway, and there's just it's just nuances.
Yeah. So, we've kind of gone pretty deep into what is, hey, there is this crisis of a knowledge gap. What is it? What's caused it? What are some of the practical solutions? So when we were going through this, you set us up. It was a great volley. You were like, what's happening? Like, what does this have to do? Do you remember we were talking about this last week in the wheel? Like, how does this fit in the wheel and the things that we've been talking about? And I wanted to
how do we clarify it for our listeners?
That this is important.
That this, how do we explain that learning how to do this appraisal can help fix
the knowledge gap. And here's the parts on the wheel that maybe you hold it up, that it directly, the self-mastery in action. So emotionally grounded, we're going to engage emotionally grounded because leaders who are grounded don't fear change. They facilitate it. They're able to be calm and to guide both generations or all generations with clarity. We're going to engage, this is still in the same one, but we like to use the term emotional regulation. And this is the mentorship. When you have a mentorship process, it's going to require patience, empathy, navigating discomfort. That's not an easy thing to do. And I would say that's a very challenging aspect for many leaders. Relationships, you're going to be focused on helping them avoid reactivity when old meets new. Because that's a kind of a defense mechanism that we have as human beings. We're going to be engaging the relational thriving part on the wheel, because strong mentors and leaders connect across differences. And this means flexing communication styles. That was Grant, my assistant's term. And I was like, oh, I like that. Mm-hmm. Flexing communication styles,
right,
where you understand that this is where offices could really engage their DISC profiles.
Well, all right, keep going, because I have one thing I want to say.
Listening deeply and building trust, and listening deeply, goodness, and building trust across generations. So that means that, you got to leave your assumptions and viewpoints and opinions about a generation that's not yours at the door. So
curiosity, be curious, become curious about this generation.
And then the other thing that we're going to use when we're trying to build this knowledge gap bridge is empowering questions. What would it take is a key one, and how can we help? Being in a place of curiosity to ask the questions that are going to bring clarity. These are the parts of the wheel that if you're not strong and you can't identify them as an organization or as a leadership team who's saying, we want to create this mentorship or we want to build this bridge for the knowledge gap. If you're not strong, you're not going to be successful. That's my strong statement of the day.
So I spent time in recruiting, internal recruiting, and knowing who you've hired, their learning style, their competencies, their proclivity when it comes to personality assessment, the 6 types of working genius. I've been talking about that a lot this week with the people I've been working with, knowing what they bring to the process when. The younger generations and things you're bringing in, they haven't had these assessments done for themselves. They are learning self-awareness. They are learning self-mastery. They are learning who they are. They may have never been in that working environment before in their life. And there has to be some...
They've never been in the arena before.
They're stepping into it for their first time.
Right. Yep.
And there needs to be an understanding, and it starts with that knowledge gathering with whoever the department is that's bringing them on, is understanding that they need to be encouraged and also paired well with someone. And there is a significant amount of information we gather when we're interviewing people that companies would behoove them to figure out how to continue to use it further down the line. Not just, wait, we're having a problem with this guy. Go get that personality assessment. Let's see why this guy isn't working. And we capture a lot of information when we're recruiting and hiring and onboarding, that about who they are, how they learn. If they don't know, figure it out.
Well,
and
it's really what you've said, and I've heard you say it. This all begins from day one, not in the middle and not at the end.
It begins in the interview process.
That's right. And so we're going to wrap it up here, and hopefully we've given everybody enough insight on how do we bridge the knowledge gap and how do we move it from a gap into wisdom bridges.
And just to say a plug for Foxygen, I had never used. Foxygen has a tool I had never experienced before that we use with our companies and clients that can pinpoint who in your company has the most tactic knowledge. And if you lost them for whatever reason, it could be detrimental to your company. Yep. We can help you come in and identify different key people that maybe you might not even understand are overstretched or overworked and are on and probably have their resume out there looking because they're overwhelmed by their job. And we have some...
I love that tool.
It's a great tool.
I call it my ball, the crystal ball. The crystal ball tool, because we really can predict some things, and we've been pretty good at it.
It is. I've never seen anything like it.
Well, we'll see you guys here next time.
Have a great week.
The Healthy Hurried Human podcast is presented by Foxygen Consulting. At Foxygen, we provide business and performance psychology and consulting. We believe healthier people make a healthier workplace. Foxygen Consulting, breathing new life into your organization.